According to aid workers and the Arakan Army rebel group, at least 31 people were killed and dozens of others injured in Myanmar after an airstrike, including bombs by the ruling junta, hit a major hospital in the western state of Rakhine. This comes as the battle between rebel groups and junta continues. Poland has detained a Russian archaeologist after accused by Ukraine of illegally excavating and plundering artifacts in Crimea, prompting the Kremlin to condemn the arrest and demand his release. The arrest highlights ongoing tensions and Ukraine's claim that Russia has taken historical items from occupied territories. EU ministers have met in Lviv to support Ukraine's EU membership bid while seeking ways to bypass Hungary's veto, which has stalled progress as full accession requires unanimous approval. EU leaders are considering sectoral integration as a temporary workaround. British police have said that more than 600 high-value artifacts were stolen from a building in the English city of Bristol, where items from a museum collection were being stored. Police has said that in the early hours of September 25, 4 men allegedly broke into Bristol Museum's collection of the British Empire and Commonwealth, but it was not previously been publicized. Bulgarian Prime Minister Rosen Zelyaskov has handed in his government's resignation following weeks of street protests. Zelyaskov has announced his resignation in a televised statement minutes before Parliament was to vote on a no-confidence motion. Pakistan's former ISI chief Faiz Hamid has been sentenced to 14 years by a Pakistani military court for violating state secrets, misusing authority, as well as engaging in political activities. The verdict marks a major move against a figure who served under jailed ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan. China's Commerce Ministry has stated that negotiations with the European Union over a minimum price plan for China-made electric vehicles have restarted today. The talks would continue into next week, while China has urged the EU not to talk independently with manufacturers. Somalia's defense minister has said that Somalis would not accept being demeaned after US President Donald Trump again insulted people from the East African country. This comes as last week Trump described Somalis as garbage at a US cabinet meeting, also recently denouncing migration from third world countries, which includes Somalia. Now we start with Thailand. Intense border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia have resulted in at least 11 civilian deaths and 74 injuries, with significant damage to civilian infrastructure, including temples. The fighting took place at multiple locations along the 817 kilometers Thai-Cambodian border. Cambodia's defense ministry has accused Thailand of brutal acts of aggression, including shelling and F-16 airstrikes targeting villages up to 30 kilometers inside of Cambodian territory. Let's listen in.
Reports include 11 civilian fatalities, including 1 infant, and 74 civilian injuries. The Ministry of National Defense spokesperson demanded that the Thai Army immediately cease all the aggressive actions, stop spreading false information that distort the truth, stop indiscriminate attacks, especially on civilian and civilian infrastructure, and stop attacks that destroy historical sites, which are not only the most valuable cultural asset for the Cambodia, but also for all of humanity.
Thailand, in turn, has denied targeting civilians, claiming it was defending its sovereignty. The Thai military has reported 9 soldiers killed and over 120 wounded. Hundreds of thousands of people have been evacuated from border areas in both countries, with ongoing shortages of food and water for those seeking refuge. Diplomatic talks between Cambodia and Thailand have begun, focused on reopening the Klong Luek border crossing to allow workers to return. US President Donald Trump, who brokered a ceasefire back in July, has expressed confidence he could help end the conflict again. Thailand, however, has shown caution in accepting outside mediation, insisting the issue should be resolved bilaterally. The situation remains tense, with both sides continuing to accuse each other of targeting civilians. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Frank Han. He's an anchor at Thai PBS, joins us live from Bangkok. Thank you very much, Frank, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what more can you tell us about... Hi. What more can you tell us about this escalating situation, regardless of the ceasefire that was brokered by US earlier in July? Why has this happened again?
It's a very again and again. This conflict started since April and right now July, and we see that both, as Roger said, since July that President of the United States, Donald Trump, helped both countries, and also comes forward in October during the ASEAN summit with the witness of Prime Minister of coalition to really push for the agreement and, of course, temporary ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia. And we see that, of course, Thailand's Prime Minister and Cambodian Prime Minister who went there in ASEAN summit in October also really see that delightful agreement together. But this time, of course, since Sunday, just the past Sunday, there are 4 days, 5 days, and we see a lot of people, as what you said, over 500,000 people evacuated at the border area. In the beginning, we said that 4 locations, and right now it's across the over 800 kilometer border there to see how both countries escalate the tensions. And as during your intro, you put a very important introduction there. As both countries' spokesperson and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs accuse each other of escalating the tension. Of course, Thailand said that Thailand needs to protect sovereignty of its territory, and accusing Cambodia of firing at Thailand soldiers first. And Cambodia said that it was Thailand's fault. But at this moment, we haven't seen any de-escalation yet, because, of course, Prime Minister of Malaysia, yesterday already called both nations' leaders to restrain with that maximum restraint at this moment. But we haven't seen that coming yet, because Thailand already said that we have to see a proper situation. But right now, we haven't seen that yet. It's not ready for any deviation also from Malaysia or the United States and Cambodia at the same time too. So right now we have to wait as if Donald Trump, the President of the United States, will call both leaders by midnight Asia. Will be a very important call for both countries to see the escalation of a border between both countries, because it's not just for both countries, the country itself, it's for people at border. Over 300,000 have been evacuated.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Frank for joining us today from Bangkok and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move to EU and China. China and EU has held a trade remedy dialogue this week and will continue consultations to next week. China has welcomed the EU's decision to restart talks on price undertakings and expressed appreciation for resolving differences through dialogue. The discussion focused on anti-subsidiary investigations into electric vehicles, with China presenting a solution representing the overall position of its industry. Chinese officials have emphasized that separate talks with individual companies could harm trust and reduce efficiency. Both sides aim to adhere to previous agreements and create an open, stable market environment for China-EU industries. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Peter Cardillo. He's a chief economist at Spartan Secure Capitals and joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, Peter, how can China and EU balance now, as you know, EU has been extremely cautious with towards China this year?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this news is welcoming news. Anytime that you have dialogue, that's good. And uh, generally speaking, sometimes you can achieve some sort of a goal. And of course, the EU has been, somewhat vocal about China's practices along with the United States. And so I think this is a step in the right direction. Of course, it doesn't mean that you're going to get agreements immediately. It takes time. And again, China is, I should say, the EU and China are two powerhouses, and whatever terms they can negotiate in terms of trading is positive for the global economy.
What do you think EU should be cautious about while trying to open dialogue, maintaining open and fair trade in electric vehicles now?
Yes, of course. Cautiousness is always necessary, and when you're dealing with a nation like China, that basically stands by its principles, you might say. It's rather difficult. We saw that with the United States. It certainly has not been an easy trading negotiation, and it's always a give and take. And I think that that's basically what we're looking here with the EU. So again, I think it's good news. Does it solve the problems immediately? No. Does it pair relationships immediately? No. But it's a step in the right direction.
And Peter, we saw that China has urged the EU not to talk independently or directly with the manufacturers. So what do you think, why, and what are the potential risks and benefits of them or EU engaging with individual companies separately versus negotiating at the national level?
Yeah, well, of course, you have to take it step by step, and I think you made a good point there in terms of the manufacturings and what that would mean on an individual basis at companies. I think that's very important. But again, the bottom line is to come to some sort of mutual agreement, and where there is a will, there is hope. If you don't have negotiations, if you don't start from the ground floor up, you're not going to get it anywhere, and it only causes confusions and, to a certain degree, disorderly markets.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Cardillo for joining us today from New York and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus back to Asia. Bangladesh's election commission has announced that the nation will hold its national election on the 12th of February 2026. This will be the country's first major vote since the student-led uprising of 2024 forced former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to flee the country and to flee to India. Now we move back to Middle East. Israel has said that Hamas will be disarmed under the US-backed Gaza peace plan, rejecting a proposal by senior Hamas leader Khaled Meshaal, who said the group might accept a weapons freeze but not full disarmament. The ceasefire, which is in effect since October 10th, has halted the war that began after Hamas's deadly attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, but it remains fragile as Israel and Hamas accuse each other of almost daily violations. The agreement is composed of 3 phases, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has recently indicated that he expected the second phase to begin soon. Under that phase, Israeli troops would further withdraw from their positions in Gaza and be replaced by an international stabilization force, while Hamas would lay down its weapons. Israel has said that Hamas will be disarmed under the US-backed Gaza plan, rejecting a proposal by senior Hamas leader Khaled Meshaal, who has said that the group might accept a weapons freeze but not full disarmament. The ceasefire, which is in effect since October 10, has halted the war that began after Hamas's deadly attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. But it remains fragile as Israel and Hamas accuse each other of almost daily violations. The agreement is composed of 3 phases, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently indicated that he expected the second phase to begin soon. Under that phase, Israeli troops would further withdraw from their positions in Gaza and be replaced by an international stabilization force, while Hamas would lay down its weapons. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ali Muhammad Bushbak. He's a Middle East researcher, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Ali, for joining us again. Good to see you. Ali, what more can you tell us about this ongoing push for phase 2 and also disarmament situation with Hamas?
Thank you for having me. The thing is, the key stumbling block in the negotiation or to going through the second phase of negotiation between Israel and Hamas, it's about the weapon of Hamas. Israel is stressed and insists that Hamas should be hand over the weapon, while Hamas it's considered as a red line for them, and they categorize their weapon to two categorization: one of offensive weapon and second is defensive weapon. Offensive weapon, it's about rocket and the launcher rocket or etc. the heavy rocket, the heavy weapon that Hamas have been used during the war. And defensive weapon, it's about the AK-47 and personal weapon that Hamas is not going to lie down this weapon. And the second point about the weapon of Hamas, Hamas stress and consider that hand over the weapon to the Israel government or Israeli army or an Israeli entity. So this is a red line for them. While they are ready to hand over the offensive weapon to the any kind of any part except Israel or any Israel allies. This is one of the significant points that lie down the process of, that's delaying the process of negotiation and second phase of negotiation between Hamas and Israel. Hamas is showing its flexibility during this 2 month of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Israel continuously violating the ceasefire, throwing bombardment the civilians and bombardment Gaza by airplane or by artillery or etc. Up to now, the Palestinian and or even Israelis, human rights organization like Bet Salem, they recorded more than 500 Israelis violation for the ceasefire. The day before yesterday, Khaled Meshaal, the head of the Hamas political abroad in Hamas, he was clear in his interview. He said Hamas is ready to freeze its weapon and going through a very long-term truce between Hamas and Israel to show its flexibility with regard to the weapon or with regard such kind of process. Khalil al-Hayya, one of the senior negotiator for Hamas and the head of Hamas in Gaza after Yahya Sinwar, he considered that Hamas is ready to lie down its weapon and hand over the weapon in one case in the occupation and establishment of the Palestinian statehood. All of these things, it's showing it's representing the right of the Palestinian for their resistance against the occupation. According to the international law, any resistance against the occupation, it's legal, except in the Palestinian case because of the double standard and because of they are Palestinians, so they should be, prohibited and forbidden for the Palestinian to use their right against the occupation. In West Bank as well, as the situation is more incredible and the Palestinian Authority can't solve or handle the situation. Yeah, Soma.
Right. Unfortunately, Ali, we are running out of time for this discussion, but thank you very much as always for joining us and sharing the insight, the reality on Palestine and Gaza as well as West Bank. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. In a series of comments made today by Kremlin, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has commented on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Sergei Lavrov has said that the root causes of the Ukraine conflict needs to be resolved. He has further emphasized that NATO membership for Ukraine is unacceptable for Russia and has called for security guarantees for all sides, highlighting the need for a long-term sustainable peace package. He has further noted that the US President Donald Trump made genuine attempts to settle this conflict, and Lavrov then added that the meeting with US envoy Steve Witkoff has eliminated all misunderstandings with the US. According to the leader, Russia continues to push for dialogue and former agreements to ensure regional stability. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now, Professor, how might Russia's stated refusal to accept any kind of Ukrainian NATO membership shapes the prospects for long-term solution and peace agreement? Also, what do you think when Lavrov says that the root cause should be solved? What do you think he's suggesting or pointing towards? Professor, you might be muted here.
Well, we hear those lies and manipulations from Lavrov and Putin all over and all over again. What they mean by root causes is as if Russia is entitled to have everything in the Eastern Europe and in the world, and this is absolute nonsense. Well, he goes back to the 19th century Russian Empire and want to recreate that. But we're in the 21st century. There are international laws, there is United Nations Charter and principles of non-use of force, and the world is no longer in the 19th century, and it's high time for Lavrov to understand that and not to talk about root causes. Obviously, nobody in the world will allow change of territory through using military force, and that has been written in every single document over the last century. And maybe Lavrov should read those documents, being a foreign minister of Russia, instead of talking absolute lies and manipulations. And yes, Russia is talking about NATO membership of Ukraine, and that has not been the case for the last 17 years. Ukraine applied for membership after the Russian aggression against Georgia. Georgia and Ukraine, two countries vulnerable from the Russian aggression, finally, after many years of neutrality, decided to protect themselves. The Russians attacked Georgia, and as a result of that attack, Georgia and Ukraine applied for membership, and NATO said no for 17 years. So Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov should say thank you, NATO, for not expanding for the last 17 years and not taking Georgia and Ukraine. It's exactly the opposite. Whatever Kremlin says, whatever Lavrov says, it's always the opposite. They lie and they spread false news and fake news all over and over again. There was no NATO expansion in the last 17 years to take Ukraine and Georgia. It's exactly the opposite. Never ever a single bullet was shot from NATO into Russia. NATO is not a threat to Russia. NATO is not a threat to any other country in the world. NATO is a defensive organization where sovereign countries join to protect themselves. And every country in the world is welcoming to NATO to protect itself from the Russian aggression. As simple as it is. So there is no threat to Russia whatsoever. Never ever for 75 years NATO did anything aggressive against Russia. And they should simply stop telling lies in Kremlin.
Thank you very much, Professor Vasilin Popovsky, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move the focus to Bulgaria. Bulgarian Prime Minister Rosen Zelyaskov has resigned following weeks of protests over economic policies and corruption. His decision came just before a no-confidence vote in the parliament. In a televised statement, Zelyaskov has said that the coalition has discussed the situation and chose to step down, emphasizing that the government must align with public expectations. The protests, which have been ongoing across Bulgaria, were sparked by proposed hikes in social security contributions and taxes on dividends to finance higher state spending. Despite withdrawing its 2026 budget plan last week, protests continued over long-standing frustrations with corruption and political instability. President Rumen Radev has earlier called for the government's resignation, urging lawmakers to heed the public's demands. Radev will now seek to form a new government and, if unsuccessful, will appoint an interim administration ahead of new elections. Bulgaria is set to join the Eurozone on January 1st, adding urgency to this situation. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, can you share what led to this situation as government resigning in Bulgaria, and what challenges might Bulgaria face now in forming a stable government ahead of its Eurozone accession?
Yes, what led to the resignation is massive protests over the last 10 days. They started on the 1st of December. They started actually earlier, but the 1st of December was the largest one, with over 100,000 only in Sofia, in the capital, with also many people all over Bulgaria, in all the cities. And then another large protest on 10th of December, already demanding resignation. And see, it's good to mention that it's the young people in Bulgaria, no longer my generation and the generation of 40s and 50s, but rather the young generation of 20s, Generation Z, are those who demand change. The reason is that somehow the same party called Gerba for the last 16 years has been in power with some interruptions, but mostly during those years, with its kind of very prone to corruption leader, Boyko Borisov, who is playing pro-European, and he kind of developed his image based on the Bulgarian accession into the Schengen zone, into the euro currency. So he's, again, very manipulative in his language, pretending to be pro-European and that Bulgaria is better than before. But generally, there was no certainty that corruption is gone. Actually, exactly the opposite. Large projects were given to his proxies. A lot of money was stolen. And those deals led to his finance minister, but also another oligarch here is also involved, Delian Pevsky, and they were listed by the Magnitsky law in United States as those that needs to be sanctioned by the US banks and US entities. And all this accumulated into a large protest against those two persons, Boyko Borisov, who was in charge in the last 16 years, and Delian Pevsky, who is this oligarch and also a leader of a minority party. And obviously, the young people in Bulgaria want free and fair elections, and this will happen possibly in the beginning of March. The president, Rumen Radev, may also create his own political party, and that will probably also take from some other small parties. So the expectations are elections in March, and hopefully those corrupted politicians not to be allowed to run into power anymore.
Hopefully, yes. We will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now, moving the focus to UK, Bristol police in UK have said that more than 600 artifacts of significant cultural value have been stolen from Bristol Museum's archive in high-value raid. 4 men have gained entry into the building in the Cumberland Basin area of the city in the early hours of 25 September, as per reports. Items from the museum's British Empire and Commonwealth collection were stolen, and detectives are now trying to trace 4 men captured in the area on the CCTV. The men are described as being white and were all wearing jackets and baseball caps. The theft follows a robbery at Paris's Louvre Museum in October, which exposed major security lapses at the world's most visited museum. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.